brings up, but there's a discomfort, particularly among those who are on the political left, with acknowledging ugly stuff especially when it really. I do think it actually does involve race, but not in the way that was suggested by my friend. I think the way it involves race is anytime there are patterns that emerge, people particularly on the left, are extremely uncomfortable with acknowledging it. And I just want to really quickly read some of the key findings from the report from that grooming gang. And if I go on too long, just cut me off and tell me to shut up. But the audit exposed systemic, long-standing institutional failures in safeguarding children, turning a blind eye to abuse rather than intervening. There is persistent reluctance to record or confront the ethnicity of perpetrators. In fact, data on it was often omitted or obscured due to fears of being labeled racist or inflaming tensions. Local data, where available, indicated a significant overrepresentation of suspects from Asian and Pakistani backgrounds, but this was ignored or downplayed at the national level because the data collection systems were weak and incomplete. And so I think that's the main issue here, and I think that's where we see some of that from our speaker who left the room.
And that's the Casey report. That's the report that I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
Where it's the report that dragged essentially our current government kicking and screaming to do a national investigation finally after they had said no to 2 previous ones.
And Ewan, I commented in the chat on the knife girl. I know we're talking about 2 different places. Grooming gangs primarily in the UK and the knife wielding girl in Dundee, Scotland. My only point about that, Ewan, is I did a little bit of digging into it, and it looks like the guy who's recording the video, who's allegedly this migrant who's going after young girls, he was with his wife at the time. Apparently, reports are he was the one doing the recording. In my experience, the guys going around scouting, cruising for young girls usually aren't the ones who are pulling out their phones and recording. All I was saying there is that story and that image of that girl holding the knife went so viral so fast. Everyone superimposed their narrative that they wanted to be true on her, by the way, including myself initially. And I just think it's important to peel one layer back of the onion before we go too crazy with each story, because if we do that, it actually risks, and the facts turn out to be different, it actually risks undermining the real legitimate issues like the grooming gang story that we're discussing.
AJ, okay, so respectfully, I agree with you pretty much entirely. I agree that we have to wait for more information to come out with this, but there are 2 different sides going on at the same time, right? So I did do digging as well.
Yeah, 2 stories for sure.
And so one of the girls' moms made a statement out to people saying that there was actually 3 girls involved. That man did go up to one of them and like sexually touched her. Or came onto her or something. Yeah, and this is like the mom's statement or whatever. And that this had happened to them multiple times, hence why the girl was carrying the weapons. And that the 3rd girl actually had gone to call the police. And that's why she's not in the video. But there were 3 girls involved in the entirety of it. Okay. And the girl who didn't have the knife and axe actually ended up in the hospital with a concussion and a major bump on her head because the guy physically attacked her.
Interesting.
There's a hospital report that comes out.
No, sir. By the way, I'm not challenging it. I'm not challenging it. I actually don't have my mind made up on the story. So that's interesting. I didn't know that information. Thanks for sharing that. But I think you and I would both agree that most people are not doing the digging you and I are doing on this, and they see that knife out and they get really excited because it's like a great way to advance the narrative. And I just worry about that sometimes because it can actually end up undermining. But in this case, it might just be the case. I didn't have those facts, so thanks.
Yeah, I think having the facts is. Oh, sorry, you go, Sarah, David.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that is one thing that Republicans tend to be really bad about, more so than Democrats, is we don't necessarily get all the facts before we express our fake outrage. You know, and so I do. I just wanted to know. I think that's an important point because I see it way more so in the Republican Party than I do the Democrat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well with the girl with the knife and the axe. I think like part of the reason it went so viral in the UK, because everybody in the UK is obviously talking about it too. And there's like people that stream and talk about politics here that I listen to and follow. I think the reason why it went so viral is the fact that the overall message that little girls are carrying around knives and axes to protect themselves because the police won't do anything for them is sort of the overall message that's being spread. That's like the issue at hand, is that they don't feel safe, especially working class girls. If they're coming from working class backgrounds, they don't feel safe because the police will not respond to their pleas for help. And that's like what made everybody in the UK just like livid at that story.
Well, and honestly, this was just a tactic to shut Jarl down in the chat, which it did work because it appears as though he has left our presence. But he made the statement in chat that the murders way more children than being raped in the UK. And just out of curiosity, because I enjoy challenging Jarl, I looked up the statistics, and the 2021 statistics for U.S. children murdered was just under 2,000. I think it was 1,750 or something. If I'm being liberal with that number, and I say, let's say on average, 2,000 children a year are murdered in the U.S., the statistics on rape in the UK for minors is 60,000 over the course of I think 5 years. So even if I said that same 5-year period, 10,000 U.S. children murdered, he was grossly wrong. So I think that says.
I'm seeing a trend about him being grossly wrong. Statistics. I'm sorry.
He's grossly wrong per capita.
Yes, per capita.
Per capita.
Of course, we're all the ones that apparently don't understand what per capita means, but he's grossly wrong on it.
Yeah, Jarl was proven wrong a little bit left and right this morning, earlier in the room. He came up and wanted to be spicy.
It was pretty scathing, actually. I was like, damn.
I think his argument style is just to rouse the other side and not actually make a salient point.
Well, what cracks me up is how once he's proven incorrect, how he moves the bar like so belligerently.
Right.
Like America's 5 times worse than Canada, and then it's like, no, it's 2. It looks like it's 1.8 times. Yeah, that's double. Double is horrible. And it's like, wait a second. Will you please acknowledge that you doubled the double already?
Just exactly what I said. Just meant to frustrate you.
Oh, it works. That's why I just shut up.
I think what I wish the Roadfields of the world would understand is by continuing to refuse to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is mainly there are significant cultural issues at play here. You're actually going to make life way worse for these Indians in Pakistan. I mean, look at me, right? Like for people who look like me. And there is a way of addressing this issue head on that can be done in a reasonable way that acknowledges, it's not all brown people, right? But there are some serious cultural issues at play here that we have to tackle and figure out how to address, and we're not afraid of calling it out. And if you don't do that, then the only people who are going to do it are going to be people who aren't going to handle it reasonably. they're going to be the people who aren't afraid of being called racist. And I don't think you want those people making the policy. So you neglect this issue at your peril.
Yeah, no, totally valid point. I mean, my next door neighbor here, him and his wife, they're basically fresh off the boat from Pakistan, and we get along great. You know, we have chats all the time. I would never judge all Pakistanis for what has happened with the grooming gangs in the UK. I think it's really important to focus on the actual issue at hand, which is that this specific group of men should all be prosecuted and deported and sent to prison and, you know, punished and I would say publicly flogged at this point. But that wouldn't change my view of my neighbor, you know? It's like, well, obviously I would never think that way. So I mean, you gotta have a cool head with this stuff. You can't just generalize everyone in these cases. And I mean, this is the problem with people like the woke leftists, is that they generalize all white people, right? So you can't. That's the problem. That's the specific problem at hand. You can't call everybody the same thing if they come from the same background. You can't call all Pakistanis in the UK gringos, because that's just not the case. But you have to at least call out that group. And most importantly, I think that what the people in the UK are angriest about, and I think that this is being misunderstood or purposefully, put in the media, is that I don't think that the ethnically English people are angry at the Pakistanis. I think they're angry at the government for actively covering this up for so long. That's the anger.
I mean, I think it's the good old saying of if you import to the third world, you become the third world. And it's not that Pakistani and it's not like everyone who's from Pakistan are bad people, but again, it's what country are you coming from? What type of culture have you guys created there? And in Pakistan they have a culture where rape is okay for the most part. It's highly accepted.
But Alex, I think that in this case, so I disagree. So I think that what has gone wrong in this specific instance is the fact that the police did not enforce the law. They did not arrest these men and prosecute them for pedophilia on mass amounts of children. They actively covered it up. That is the problem at hand, specifically with the Pakistan grooming gangs in the UK.
But by the way, I just real quick, I think a part of this was also that we don't often mention, because I think, tell me if you disagree, but one less spoken about aspect of this is that a lot of these white younger girls were from lower classes, and there was some interactions with police that seemed to signal that they kind of didn't give a fuck about them, because they're like, what are you doing out there at night doing this anyways, and essentially slut shaming them a little bit, and because they were so there's many layers to this story. There's also combined with fears of being labeled racism and inflaming racial tensions if it got out, if they actually arrested these guys and went forward with it, and the stories got out that there are these brown guys going around raping white girls, what that would do in the community. There's a lot going on that caused this cover up, and all of it is terrible.
Yeah, I did want to make a quick point, because AJ, you're 100% right, and I forgot to bring this point up earlier, is that as an outsider living in the UK, watching, how everybody behaves around me and stuff like that, I feel like there's a distinct disdain for the English working class here, with specifically the middle class and the upper middle class and stuff like that, where they really look down on these people. And I've heard people make these quips and here and there, all the time, about working class people in this country. And that's the other issue too, is that there's a very definitive class system. For me, being from Canada, it's my neighbor was blue collar, and I came from a more white collar family, and the working class versus like the middle class all sort of like combined, and like we never really like the class wasn't a huge thing. I mean, obviously in every country it's still there a little bit, but in the UK it's very distinct. And I think that a huge issue with the grooming gangs is the fact that most of the victims were working class girls. So yeah, 100% correct on.
And apparently they were working class from troubled backgrounds who were perhaps already in the social services system, perhaps missing one parent or even both parents, also possibly with drug problems and so forth. I'm reading about this now. And they seem to have first been given drugs and alcohol, and I guess that's the grooming process, and then eventually abused in a sexual manner. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, you're 100%.
I take your point, and I see some of the comments in the chat voicing some frustration about the cultural component of this, because I think if we're being honest with ourselves, it's not just make sure to prosecute. There's another issue here, and it's something that is very difficult to grapple with. I don't know what the answer is, because I don't think immigration is going away anytime soon. I mean, I'm an immigrant, okay? And where I live, there's been, for example, a massive, giant influx of Indian immigrants who for the most part are law-abiding, hardworking people. Okay, I have nothing but great things to say. However, there are some cultural issues that are starting to become apparent. There is, for example, a nude beach that I frequent and that I've been going for years, and there are rules there.
Oh, I don't mean to dox you. You're in Canada, right?
That's right. Yeah. So
I'm from Canada. I know all about that nude beach.
Okay, so in recent years, I'm sure you've seen this yourself, there are groups, like big groups of Indian men who come down to this new beach, fully clothed. Okay, they don't even have a beach blanket, which signals to me they're not there to sit down and have a good time on the beach. And they do walkthroughs. So that they can, and then they stare, like totally without shame, just staring at the women. I've had to confront these men, sometimes while in the nude, and it's made for a funny scene, and tell them to put their phones away, stop taking photos, stop looking at these women. And women have come up to me, me and my wife, while we're there, thanking us for intervening. It's getting really bad, and part of it's like not even their fault. Like they're just from a completely different world. Like imagine you come from a world like that, and then you walk into a beach and there's like all these young women just laying around. It would fucking blow your mind. So a part of me doesn't even blame them for staring, but at the same time, we've got to figure out as a society, how do we grapple with these significant cultural differences and issues? And step one is acknowledging that they exist.
I mean, I think, but I do, AJ, I think where things go off and where things go wrong is that I think that every country has, to a certain extent, a certain native culture. And I think that it's really important that that culture's laws and, it's important to enforce that stuff, right? We need to just kind of put our foot down and be like, that's just not how you do this here.
Yeah, and I think
just explain.
And I think the biggest hurdle of that is that this obsession with every aspect of our culture and language. We didn't. I still speak Farsi and Persian. But we understood that when you come into somebody's house and the rules of the house are you take your shoes off, that's what you do. And we're very grateful, very lucky to be here, and we're very happy to do that. So when that starts going away because there's some new ideology that's, well, no, there's no longer going to be shared unified values, customs and norms. It's just everything goes because it's a beautiful multicultural place. I mean, that's chaos. So I don't know how to deal with this. Like, part of me is like, should there be training sessions at the airport when people come in?
No, I mean,
and letting them
you
know,
know,
like, this is.
I would say this, AJ. I actually think that all you need to do to fix the situation is, I mean, in the UK, for example, is just end, for example, this is like a big one that could probably fix most of the problems, is end welfare for foreign nationals. Like, we're putting billions of dollars into, like, welfare for people who are coming here and going on welfare, which is crazy to me. You should be bringing in people that add to your economy, not people that become a net drain on your economy, right? So you close all those loopholes, and you fixed probably about 80% of the entire problem right there.
Yeah, and I'm also, a part of me is also wondering if the class of immigrant has changed in recent years. By the way, even amongst my own people, I've noticed a difference. I've noticed a trend in terms of the type of Iranian who comes into Canada. It seems to be of a lower class element that didn't exist before. It used to be harder to get into the country. Like, you used to have to meet certain thresholds and hurdles to get in. And I'm thinking, is this a post-COVID thing where all of these Western countries, to make up for the labor shortages, just pumped their countries full of immigrants, and in so doing, brought in a different class of immigrant? In other words, low-skilled, for low-skilled labor, essentially. And I think that might be part of it too. Something has shifted. And I'm including my group in that just so people don't think I'm trying to target any other group in the immigration policy in that respect as well.
Yeah, no, AJ, I think you're correct. I think it's like Canada used to have, like, in my opinion, the best immigration system in the world, and Trudeau essentially changed the entire immigration system and allowed for loopholes. For example, like, you know, the student visa situation where there were 400,000, or no, I think it was even higher. It's like 800,000 students or something like that came to Canada in 1 year, and they were all for sham colleges. So they weren't even coming to get a degree. They were coming to work at Tim Hortons and work at, like, you know, low-wage jobs, which in their case they were making so much more money than where they would have made.
And Ewan, not to talk over you, but when you talk about those kind of immigration figures into Canada, you have to mention the total population of Canada, because, you know, most Americans are surprised at how relatively small the population of Canada is. It's, you know, for reference, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, maybe this total population of the size of, like, the New York and Boston region combined, and that's about it.
And by the way,
Tiny population compared to the.
Sorry to the room for I not at all wanted to shift the conversation to Canada. How much Americans hate talking about Canada and other countries, but I was using it as an illustration for what I see to be a cultural clash that I see everywhere. For the people in the chat who are saying every man's theirs, you just don't understand what the norms are at this particular beach that I'm talking about, because you're not there. When you have just picture a pack of 9 to 12 men fully clothed in jeans and long sleeves, walking up to your blanket as you lay there nude and just gawking at you. It's absolutely unheard of at this beach. And it's a massive problem. And it requires guys like me to unfortunately have to get up and police it to keep it under control, where I wish there'd be some other kind of enforcement mechanism for this kind of thing. I just don't know how to grapple with it, because you know what, most people don't do what I do. Most people just keep their head down, especially white people, because they're so afraid of being called racist. And that's kind of why I feel more of an obligation to stand up, because I know the white people are scared to do it.
Yes, I mean, what I've heard specifically about Indian immigration into Canada is it's something in the order of 2 million people over the last several years. And when you talk about the population of Canada being somewhere around 30 million total, imagine 10 housing stock in the big metropolitan areas. I've been reading about, what this was a cliche in New York for many years, but a 1-bedroom apartment or maybe 7 people are living. And, when you talk about sort of, to be crude, the horny Indian boys who are going to the nude beaches to ogle women, like, they may be just, this is true in India also, just young men. They have no privacy to themselves because they're in such overcrowded housing conditions. They're just fucking young and horny. And there was nothing like that in their society. And they can just go and sort of, get their jollies by just ogling women on the beach. And it's definitely a cultural clash at best, and I'm also jealous because there are no nude beaches in my state. I know there are some in the U.S., but as someone who respects the work of Dr. Jack Cruz, I wish I could sun my nether regions, but I don't have any private outdoor space. I live in a condo community.
Yeah, it's been a 326% increase as of the most recent numbers I have is 2023. It's only gone up since then.
Increase what? Where?
In terms of the migrant population, annual immigration trends from India in Canada. So I think permanent residents, it was like 32,000 in 2013, and then it went up to 139,000 in 2023. Projected growth, it just keeps going up, 148,000, more than 4 times.
They're saying that it's too risky to go out because, like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to be pulled in. That's the issue. Like, it's not that.
Trump said permanent residents aren't allowed to leave the country, right? That's funny.
It is kind of I don't know if he said that, but I'm just saying what my lawyer told me. My lawyer was like, hey, we recommend not leaving the country for a little bit, so just so that until you get a citizenship, and then you can, like, go ahead.
Not just conservatives, but Republicans, MAGA Republicans, crying because, I shouldn't say that, that's too pejorative. I'm fascinated by their outcry because a person was fired by his employer for behaving in a way. Oh, I'm sorry. Julio said that he was pressured to resign. It was under duress. That this person experienced consequences for behavior that he participated in online, things that he said online. It's like, are y'all new to being Negroes? When did Black people who call themselves conservative lose sight of the fact that if you want to keep your good job, you better be on your P's and Q's. And if you give people one little sliver opening to make you a target or to quote unquote force you out or whatever, even though I don't really believe that man, like I do believe that he's just doing that so he can like raise some money with GoFundMe or whatever, that your employer is going to take it because you are a Negro in the workplace. All of that crying, it's immoral. You think that's morally just? You think that's ethical? You're a Negro.